Hey everyone, just a quick disclaimer before I start the video. I am going to be getting a new mic very soon, so expect a increase in audio quality. This was recorded on my phone, and I apologize in advance for the lack of mic. Is it really those damn phones? Well, yes and no. Hey, hi, hello everyone. My name is Ren, and welcome to a slightly different video. As you can see, we're in person today. I guess you can call this a face reveal. And I want to talk about content consumption. Now, I know for a fact that I'm not the first creator to broach this topic, especially on the platform of YouTube, and many of you may find it amusing and very ironic to be speaking about the consumption of content in an ecosystem which turns out content at a scarily fast pace. Around 60 hours of content is uploaded to this platform every minute, and that's 1 hour per second, and 86,400 hours per day. Big numbers. That isn't to say all of this content is content which you intend to consume. In fact, only a small percentage of that value will be catered to your specific niche. However, you will consume regardless, and where exactly will that simulation and all those ideas which you form while watching your favorite creator go? If you're anything like me, your immediate thought was into my creative outlet, of course. But what if I told you it wasn't that simple? To illustrate my point, I'll present you with a scenario. It's Saturday morning. You slept in a little bit later than you had initially intended, but you had awoken feeling sufficiently rested and ready to work on your current creative endeavor. You sit or stand at your workspace table, preparing to create, when your phone chimes next to you. Your favorite content creator just uploaded a new video. You stop and think to yourself, 30 minutes of YouTube won't hurt before I start, will it? Before unceremoniously pressing play, one video bleeds into the next, and so on and so forth before 2 hours of time have passed, and you're left feeling overstimulated and wholly unproductive. If this sounds like something you've experienced, you're most certainly not alone. But Ren, isn't there value in consuming content which inspires and motivates me to pursue my creative endeavors? Yes, Jimmy, I'm getting there. Will you please sit down? Stop interrupting my lesson. Jeez. Now, you may have heard the phrase, creative people need time to sit and do nothing, which is something I totally agree with. But it's also something I think the majority of us have grossly misunderstood. Rather than literally sitting down and doing nothing, we tend to quickly become bored and resort to consuming content in our nothing time. This is counterproductive to the highest order. And now not only are we spending time away from our creative projects, but we're also filling our minds with so much content that we become burnt out and often overwhelmed. Have you ever eaten too much and become so nauseous that another bite of food threatened to empty your stomach right there? That is what overconsumption of content feels like as a creator. Yes, I need to consume to create, as humans need to consume to fuel themselves. But the moment I reach my threshold and I become too full to consume, any more of that content that's coming in is going to result in poor quality content coming out. I'm not telling you to become one of those freaks that wakes up at 5 a.m. every morning to stare at the sun for an hour and absorb as much vitamin D as possible, just in the hopes that they'll become some minor deity. As stated previously, we all have a threshold. I'm in no way alluding to content consumption as an outright unproductive act. More so that everything is healthy in moderation. Watch that 30-minute long barefoot Contessa video if it's going to motivate you to cook something. But call it a day there and get your ass in the kitchen. Well, Ren, what if I were to consume content for enjoyment and not for any sort of gain? What then? That's actually a pretty solid point you've brought up, Jimmy. You snotty little brat. I want you all to think back a few years. No, further than that. Yeah, that'll do. Before we had social media, before we had platforms wherein we could share every minute detail of our mundane lives and watch any type of content we so pleased, where would you consume media? The Saturday night movie. If you were lucky, maybe you had a TV at home on which your favorite series, Pokemon, would air every day at 4 o'clock. And if you were like one of those people who enjoyed books...
Don't you like books, Ren?
Jimmy, not now! You'd read for enjoyment. We as a species have been consuming media and content since the beginning of time. Whether that be music, drama, written work, screenplays, humans love sharing in the art of others' creations. But then I beg you to ask yourself, where exactly did the information and media that we consumed go to if we didn't have a space readily available to create our own content as a result of that consumption? This is where I introduce the social aspect of content consumption. Back in the day, if you'd watched a movie which you thoroughly enjoyed, you wouldn't make a video essay on it, would you? No, you'd likely talk to your friends and family about it. Maybe you'd try and make new friends with the foundation of the love for that movie. But with the introduction of social media, we've found ourselves becoming less adept within social situations and have resorted to channeling consumed media into our own content as the sole means to express ourselves. I'm going to be jumping around a bit on my points, but don't worry, we'll revisit social integration later. As of right now, I'd like to introduce you to my following point. Presume you were young again, and you'd just been to an art gallery on a school outing. You saw some cool paintings you like, and you figured you'd take a crack at drawing yourself. Now, before social media, if you had drawn a self-portrait, you'd probably show your parents, maybe your siblings, and if you weren't afraid of being called an art loser, you'd show your friends at school. They'd give you compliments on your work, and you'd go home feeling satisfied and deciding that as an individual, you need to create more. What nobody discusses about the content in, content out phenomenon is that there's a third barrier to leap over now. The acknowledgement of sharing the content which we have created. This is where social media in our current technological climate comes in. We believe that for media and projects to attain some sort of value, they need to be shared online to the eyes and ears of thousands, if not millions. This, however, is a misconception. Not to say that sharing your work on social media is a bad idea per se, but rather that this leap often comes with the expense of validating your own work and thus feeling disheartened when something you've put a lot of effort into doesn't end up performing well. In turn, content creation with the express need for validation is a deep hole which, once fallen into, is vastly difficult to climb out of. If you begin posting content which attracts attention, but then come to realize that your passions aren't what happens to be trending at the moment, you're likely to alter or completely shift your work in order to refocus your viewers. This is where we start to spiral out of control and often face burnout in the face of creating media which doesn't quite align with us as individuals. However, this shift doesn't actually start with creation. In fact, it starts with our apparent addiction: consumption. I've spent a considerable amount of time trying to ascertain what genre of music I like. Now, this is partly because I'm indecisive, and partly because I spent a few months dating someone who, because of social media and the way in which we interacted, shifted my music taste in a direction which I realize now did not quite resonate with me. If you're watching this, you know who you are, and I'm not blaming you in any way, shape, or form. I'm simply trying to prove the point that because we interacted so often through sites like Instagram, your algorithm influenced mine, thus leading me to believe I enjoyed something which I didn't. Suffice to say, listening to a genre of music that you don't totally gel with will put you off listening to music as a whole, and as a result, you might find life a bit more dull. All of this transpires into the overarching issue of content consumption, which is engaging with media that you don't enjoy and or doesn't resonate with you. If you spend 3 hours every day watching punchy gameplay videos which do not actually resonate with you as a human, but do keep your attention, of course you won't be in the mindset to create the long-form content which you as an individual do in fact enjoy. This is just an example, and in no way am I trying to dishearten or insult the content creators who do make punchy short-form gaming videos. Now, this is just an example, and in no way am I trying to dishearten or insult the content creators who do in fact make these short-form punchy gameplay videos, but all types of content have a certain audience. However, we often find ourselves among an audience which we don't actually have the same interests as, simply because the internet or social media has forced this type of content down our throats as a result of it being popular. Before the internet, if all you had was $5 and you went to the bookstore to pick up a book on dragons, but you saw a book about cooking, which is also $5, being advertised because it was popular at the time, which book do you think you would buy? The one about dragons, obviously, because you have a finite amount of money to spend and your interest is that of dragons. Now, presume the books are content and the money is the consumption threshold we spoke about earlier. Why would you consume 30 minutes worth of brain rot reels, which are 2 minutes long and will ultimately lead to doom scrolling and add no value to your life other than a quick dopamine hit, rather than consuming a 30-minute long informative video or episode of a series which actually leaves a lasting impression on you or inspires you to create in the moment? That was a rhetorical question, which I'm going to answer right now with 2 words. Attention span. The shortening attention span pandemic has swept the globe in recent years and is a topic too lengthy to discuss in this video alone, but the short and sweet of it is we have become reliant on dopamine to feel good from short-form content we consume instead of relying on long-lasting serotonin, which our brains produce after a piece of long-form content. Let's say you manage to cut yourself short after 30 minutes of Instagram Reels or short punchy gameplay videos, and you decide now would be the time to create. Unfortunately, as you are creating, you will immediately be comparing yourself. Unfortunately, as you are creating, you will be immediately comparing yourself to the creator whose heavily edited piece of content you just consumed and will become disheartened. Comparison is the thief of joy, after all. Thus, you stop creating and are left back at square one. It's quickly becoming obvious that this is one big loop, isn't it? Speaking of loops, let's jump back to the social implications of overconsumption. Think of your favorite content creator or influencer. Ideally, this is someone who makes a variety of different types of content, and that content you would consume regardless of the medium, right? On surface level, you enjoy their content, but looking at it slightly more intricately, it becomes clear that you gain enjoyment out of seeing them entertain as a person rather than from the medium they are performing in. This is the first step to understanding why we as individuals have lost the ability to socially integrate as well as before. We become enthralled with creators as people and often without intending to form parasocial relationships wherein we align ourselves with their values simply because we cannot find a physical iteration of someone like them in our own social circles. Now, I myself am not totally innocent in this regard. One of my absolute favorite podcasts is Creepcast, hosted by Wendigoon and Meat Canyon, 2 influencers who I strongly enjoy watching regardless of the content they create. And yes, at surface level, their content resonates with me as I enjoy horror, but if they as creators were to post something wholly irrelevant to that content, I would still thoroughly enjoy consuming it because I am a fan of them, and not necessarily the medium which they use to entertain. It's important to make this discernment between content and creator as we fall further into the habit of fulfilling our social stimulus from sources which we only interact with on a virtual level. If we continue to live this way, we will struggle to make new friends, leading us back to consuming more content. It's a vicious cycle which we find ourselves trapped in. That's why the matter is not as simple as turn off your phone and go for a walk, spend some time in nature. The reason this is not the solution is because, as previously noted, the issue has many knock-on effects, because it's becoming increasingly uncommon to find ourselves out in social situations. So too has it become more dangerous to actually attempt to engage with said social situations. Think about your own city or town. How likely are you to feel safe going out and engaging with people you had never met simply on the basis of shared interests? I, for one, as a woman, would not step out my door with a group of friends or my pepper spray, which is why I find myself so often inside, because plainly it's become a safer environment than public will ever be. We cannot put the blame solely on parents who are giving their children technology at increasingly younger ages, because they simply don't have a choice in our modern society. If I had a child, I would want to be able to contact them. I would need some way to know they're safe. Okay, so give them a burner phone or a Nokia without social media. If only it were that simple. Now, as younger generations become more attuned to the normalcy of social media, so too does the social culture shift. It's no longer a case of, I like you, can I get your number so I can call you? But rather, I like you, can I get your Snapchat? And oftentimes, teenagers will find themselves ostracized when unable to engage with their peers through social media. As a parent, you're presented with two evils and told to choose the lesser of. Allow your child free reign of social media and the ability to fit in with their peers, or bar them from what you deem harmful technology and risk their displeasure at not finding their clip. As I draw this video to a close, I invite you to reflect on the content in the comments down below. Remember how important it is to stay true to yourself and your values online. Stay creative, and don't let overconsumption consume you.